This is 14.3. In this session, I'll be focusing on improving my client's cardiovascular endurance. I will also be linking it to basketball as this is the sport that he plays and that his aims have been specific to. His aims are all based around basketball as the sport he plays. He wants to improve his cardiovascular endurance and muscular endurance to improve his in-game performance. So for this session, I've chosen to do his cardiovascular endurance. I can't really check for the success of just this specific training session as he'll be doing lots of other training sessions, so then I'll be checking his success throughout the whole program on all the training sessions, and we'll be doing tests on him every week. Before we do this session, I had to do a risk assessment for this session. Here it is. I also had to do a PAR-Q on my client. We also did some tests on my clients and got some results on his heart rate, blood pressure, peak flow and BMI. I'll be leading this session in the sports hall at Basvic, and I'll be using 1/6 of the sports hall, and I will require the 1/6 of the sports hall with a basketball hoop in, as this will be vital for my session. I will only need cones and a basketball. And at the start of the session, I'll check that my client will have the right kit on to participate and that all jewellery is removed. During the session, I'll need to ensure that there are no hazards that could harm my participant, which I've used the risk assessment for, and when packing away, to show my client how to pack away anything that I ask them to pack away just for safety reasons. In case of an emergency, I will have to ensure that my client knows where the assembly point is, being the netball courts, for where we are in the college. The teachers that will be with me while the session go on is a first aider, and I'll also have a phone in the office if an ambulance is needed to be called. And there will also be a medical bag in there. I'll then have to stop the session to do this and get my participants to stay together in a certain place, and I'll tell them to go while I deal with the injured participant. The number of participants won't affect my session, but if the space is less than expected, I'll just have to make each section a shorter distance. The sports hall gets cleaned most days, so I will have to check that the floor has dried and isn't wet so that my clients won't fall over, and when my participants are running, that there isn't anything in the way that they could fall over. I will welcome my class and ask them how they are all doing and how they've been so far. Then I'll ask if they have any problems like not feeling very well or any injuries. I'll then check that they have the right attire on and ask them to politely remove any jewellery that they are wearing. I will make it clear at the start of the session what the whole session is going to consist of, and that they need to listen to me at all times and do as I say for safety reasons, as well as I will be strict with my class in that they do everything how I want them to do it for their safety and so that the lesson goes smoothly so we don't run out of time. But I will also have a joke with my client and make them feel like they want to be there and enjoy it as much as possible. I will also let them know that if they don't want to do anything for various reasons, that they can just tell me and drop out at any time, but I will motivate them to carry on as much as possible if they're finding part of the session particularly hard or challenging. For the warm-up, we will start with a warm-up where he will perform a low-intensity jog from the first cone to the final cone and back. He will do this twice, and everything else twice. This will then be followed by dynamic stretches like lunges, open the gate, calf sweeps, kick-outs, and then some more static stretches on his arms that I will lead. Our main content will consist of my client travelling at different speeds from cone to cone. There will be 4 cones laid out, all being 5 metres apart from each other. From the first cone to the second, my client will need to walk, and then once he gets to the next cone, he will then jog to the next one, and then the final cone is 10 metres away, and he will then have to sprint to the last cone. He will do this 3 times, and that just being one set, and he will do 3 sets of each set of the cones getting 5 metres further away, and the final one getting 10 10 meters further away, and we'll use a basketball in this as well. In between each go, he will have to perform 10 burpees in the second and third set, and in between each set, they will get 2 minutes rest, and also each go they will walk back to the start where they get a rest during this. I will walk through it before my client performs it and explain what pace they need to try and go at, and at different stages while my client is taking part, I will watch at all times and encourage when needed, and to watch that they are doing everything properly. My client can vary the speeds during the drill to make his needs as long as he is getting quicker throughout, then this is fine, but I will make sure that my client is pushing himself. The activity is progressive as each set the distance increases and makes it hard for my client. We will perform our cool down on my client so that his heart rate and breathing rate can gradually drop to its resting levels as they will have increased when exercising. It also allows for a gradual recovery for the muscles and will prevent injury and aching or DOMS from being bad, but doesn't stop them always from occurring. We will start the cool down with a brisk walk where my client's strides will be bigger than usual to stretch out the legs. Then I will demonstrate a series of stretches such as lunges, calf sweeps, shoulder rotation, tricep stretch, bicep stretch, and a series of sat down stretches on the legs. While performing this, I will debrief my client and ask them how they thought the session went for them, if they want me to push them more or make it harder next time, and what they have learnt from this session. Once they've given me their feedback, I will then also give them theirs and praise them for what they did well and for the effort levels that they put in the session. I will then pack away the 4 cones and will already have the basketball so that my client doesn't get distracted in the cool down by it. This will only take a minute, and then I will leave with my client. Like I said, this is my previous client aims. I then got some feedback from my client. This consisted of that I encouraged and motivated him when doing exercise, so this then pushed him to do it harder and made him work harder and got him through any hard stages that came up. He also said that my drills were progressive drills and sport related. I started off easy with just 5 meter sprints, then I made it a longer length sprints, and then I also added in burpees in between, and then in the final one I added a basketball to make it hard. He also said that my session pushed him hard, which was good for him because then it really will help him improve his cardiovascular endurance. And then to link with cardiovascular endurance, he said that it was goal related. Only criticism I got from my client was that I could have changed the drills up a bit to prevent tedium. I can see where my client is going with this, as the drill was the same every time apart from the last time he just used the basketball. So I maybe could have used I could have varied up the sprints or what he had to do in the drill in between or something like that just to prevent tedium. And I think this is a fair point. I also got some feedback from my observer. He said that my session was set out before it started, so when my client arrived, we were ready to start the session straight away. He said that I also greeted my client nicely, so when he came in, I asked him how his day was and how he was doing and all of that, and that I checked for all jewellery to be removed before we'd started anything, and for him to have the appropriate clothes on, which he did. And then he said that I also, like my client, said that I showed clear progression in the drill, and that I didn't progress it too quickly and spaced it all out, so that I wasn't working, because it wasn't an overload session with my client, so I did it smoothly to build it up. And then he said I also had a good effective cool down for the muscle groups that were used during the session, and that I did enough in there, and that this was the same for the warm up, that I warmed my client up appropriately for the session we were about to be doing. He also said that I could have done a debrief on the client at the end of the session. This was definitely a negative for my session, as I was supposed to do this at the end of the session, but then I forgot it during the cool down. So this would have definitely been good to see how my client found the session, and if he wanted me to change anything up or do anything different for next time. So this would have been good to do. So from this feedback, I've got my strengths and areas for improvement. The strengths were that the session was set out beforehand so we could get straight into it. I greeted my client nicely at the start of the session and checked for jewellery and the right attire, and that I showed clear progression in my drill, and I had effective warm-up and cool-down, and I encouraged my client and motivated him through, and the whole thing was goal-related to his goals that he had set at the start of the programme. Then the areas for improvement was to change up the drill bit to prevent tedium. The drill itself was good, but it was very repetitive, so I could have changed something up there. For example, I could have just changed up the drill instead of it just being running and moving in a straight line. I could have changed the directions or added in a little game during it to also look at if I changed directions to add in agility, and then if I'd added in the game, it would have made my client maybe enjoy it a bit more. And then my last improvement was just to debrief my client at the end. I was supposed to do this, but I forgot to. I would have done this in the warm up and asked him how he thought the session went, and if there was anything that he would have changed if he could, or added in. And then if he feels like if it worked him hard enough, and then I would have probably asked him some questions on what we were doing and that. So throughout the whole 6 weeks, we will definitely be focusing on cardiovascular and muscular endurance throughout the whole thing. So by the first 3 weeks, I would have hoped to have upped the weight or reps and reps for weightlifting for his muscular endurance, and then I'll be doing a test every week on his cardiovascular endurance. So hopefully his speed in that will become quicker, and then it'll be the same by the end of the 6 weeks. But I'd hope that his change from the first week to the third week, and then from the third week to the sixth week. In the third week to the sixth week, his change would have been greater, but this is just what I'm hoping for. I will check that this has been successful by checking the amount of weight and reps that he's doing and keeping a tally of this throughout the whole 6 weeks. And then, like I said, I'll be doing a test every week on his cardiovascular endurance so I can see if it is improving him. Then my strengths and area for improvement in the whole program itself, I'd say my strengths are that I targeted their goals. So at the start, I asked my client what his goals were, and I've targeted all the sessions on these goals. So it's cardiovascular endurance and muscular endurance. So I've done different training types like fartlek, weight training, circuit training, HIIT training, various trainings like that to do this. And this is good as I've varied up the sessions. I haven't just done the same sessions, and I've used different training types as another strength. So this is good to prevent tedium, and it can also target his cardiovascular endurance or muscular endurance in different ways. And then I've also added in overload and I've made the drills progressive. This is good as it will push my client to work harder and will help him reach his final goals. And it's good to use both overload and progressive, because if I was just progressing through, it'd probably get a bit tedium, as then overload can help towards progression to the progressive if I do it every now and then, especially in weight training. And then I've applied a risk assessment before doing anything. Then the areas for improvements definitely in the warm up. I could have varied up the warm up, as I've used the same warm up throughout my whole whole program quite a lot. I also think it's good to do the same warm up so he as this is quite common for teams to do, so that they can get a bit of familiarization going and that he has his own warm up to do. I also, so I've been saying that I was going to test his cardiovascular endurance. I haven't actually put this into my program, so I needed to just add that in so that I can check his success and measure this. And then I made it goal related, but I haven't had many drills progressing into using a basketball as well, which would have been good, as this is related to his sport, which is his overall goal to be better in that sport. So it would have been good maybe if to just add in a basketball here and then, and it also would have prevented tedium, as he obviously enjoys playing basketball and would enjoy it more. So it would have been good to just have more drills with basketball in.